The knock came at 7:32 p.m., sharp and hesitant, like a heartbeat unsure of its rhythm. Ethan Carter froze, his fork halfway to his mouth, the glow of his laptop screen casting shadows across his small Seattle apartment. He wasn't expecting anyone. Nobody ever knocked in this quiet corner of Capitol Hill, where neighbors kept to themselves and the world felt like it held its breath after dark. He opened the door to find Riley Parker, the new neighbor from across the hall, standing there with a sheepish grin and a battered laptop tucked under their arm. Riley, with their short, electric purple hair and oversized flannel, looked like they'd stepped out of an indie album cover. "Hey, Ethan, right? My laptop's acting up, and I'm kinda desperate. You're good with tech, aren't you?" Their voice was soft, almost nervous, but their hazel eyes held a spark that made Ethan's pulse stutter. He nodded, stepping aside to let them in, though his apartment was a mess of takeout containers and half-read books. "Yeah, I tinker a bit. What's the issue?" he asked, trying to sound casual while his mind raced. He'd seen Riley around, moving in last month, always with earbuds in, always alone. They were an enigma, non-binary and unapologetically themselves, with a quiet intensity that made Ethan curious in ways he hadn't been in years. Riley set the laptop on his cluttered coffee table, explaining how it kept freezing mid-video. As Ethan poked around the system, their conversation drifted from tech jargon to something softer. Music, Seattle's rain-soaked charm, the way the city felt like it was always hiding secrets. Riley's laugh was low and warm, like a melody Ethan hadn't realized he'd been missing. By the time he fixed the laptop, it was past 9, and Riley lingered, their fingers brushing Ethan's as they reached for the device. "You're a lifesaver," Riley said, their gaze lingering a beat too long. "I owe you one. Maybe coffee sometime?" The question hung in the air, fragile and electric, and Ethan felt something shift inside him, a door creaking open after years of being locked. He hadn't always been this guarded. 2 years ago, Ethan had been engaged to Mark, a charming lawyer who'd promised forever but left when Ethan came out as bisexual, calling it confusion he didn't have time to deal with. The betrayal had carved a hollow space in Ethan's chest, one he'd filled with work and solitude. Now here was Riley, with their easy smile and unguarded warmth, threatening to unravel it all. Over the next week, coffee turned into late-night talks on the apartment building's rooftop, where the Seattle skyline glittered like a promise. Riley shared fragments of their life, growing up in a small Oregon town, coming out as non-binary at 19, and moving to Seattle to escape the weight of family expectations. "I wanted to be somewhere I could breathe," they said one night, their breath visible in the chilly air. Ethan listened, captivated, feeling the walls he'd built start to crumble. But not everyone in their building was as open. Mrs. Callahan, the nosy retiree downstairs, had started giving Riley pointed looks, muttering about those kinds of people when she thought no one could hear. Ethan overheard her one morning in the lobby, her words sharp enough to cut. He wanted to confront her, to defend Riley, but fear held him back. Fear of being seen, of being judged, of reopening old wounds. One evening, Riley showed up at Ethan's door again, this time without the laptop. "Can we talk?" they asked, their voice quieter than usual. They sat on his couch, knees drawn up, and confessed they'd gotten a letter slipped under their door, and signed "Cruel," telling them they didn't belong. Ethan's stomach twisted as Riley's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I thought Seattle would be different," they whispered. He reached for their hand, his heart pounding. "You belong here," he said fiercely. "With me." The words slipped out before he could stop them, raw and unguarded. Riley's breath caught, and for a moment, the world was just the two of them, their hands clasped, the silence heavy with possibility. The next morning, Ethan woke with Riley's words echoing in his mind. "You belong here, with me." He hadn't meant to say it, not so boldly, but the look in Riley's eyes, hope mingled with fear, had made it impossible to regret. They'd stayed up until dawn, talking about everything and nothing, their hands never quite letting go. But the letter lingered like a shadow. Ethan found himself scanning the hallways, wondering who in their building could harbor such hate. He wanted to protect Riley, to make their new home feel safe, but doubt gnawed at him. Could he really be what they needed when he was still piecing himself back together? At work, Ethan's tech support job felt suffocating. The fluorescent lights and endless tickets couldn't drown out his thoughts of Riley. He texted them during his lunch break, suggesting a walk through Volunteer Park after work. Riley's reply was instant. "Meet you at 6. Bring your courage." The message made him smile, but it also stirred unease. Courage wasn't his strong suit. Not since Mark had left him questioning everything. The park was alive with autumn's blaze, leaves crunching underfoot as Ethan and Riley wandered past the conservatory. Riley wore a knitted scarf that kept slipping, and Ethan couldn't resist tucking it back around their neck. The gesture felt intimate, natural, and Riley's shy smile sent warmth flooding through him. "You're good at this," Riley teased, their voice light but their eyes searching. "Good at what?" Ethan asked, though he knew. "Making me feel seen," Riley said softly. They stopped by a pond, the water reflecting the fading sun. "I haven't felt that in a long time." Ethan wanted to tell them how much they made him feel alive again, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he took their hand, and they stood there, the world fading to just the two of them. It was then that Ethan noticed a figure watching from a distance. Mrs. Callahan, her lips pursed, her eyes narrowing. His grip on Riley's hand tightened, a silent vow to stand his ground. Back at the apartment, the tension followed them. Another letter had appeared under Riley's door, this one worse, words that made Ethan's blood boil. "We need to do something," he said, pacing Riley's small living room, where plants lined the windowsill and fairy lights cast a soft glow. Riley sat cross-legged on the floor, their expression a mix of defiance and exhaustion. "I've dealt with this before," Riley said, their voice steady but strained. "But it still hurts, like I'm not allowed to just exist." Ethan knelt beside them, his heart aching. "You don't have to face this alone," he said. "We'll figure out who's doing this, and we'll make it stop." They spent the evening brainstorming, taping the letters to Riley's fridge like evidence in a detective novel. Ethan suggested checking the building's security camera, a clunky old thing in the lobby. Riley hesitated, worried about escalating things, but Ethan's determination was infectious. "We're not hiding," he said, surprising himself with his own resolve. The next day, they got access to the footage through the building manager, a gruff but fair woman named Carla. The grainy video showed a figure slipping a letter under Riley's door. Hooded, unidentifiable, but moving with purpose. Ethan's stomach sank. This wasn't a prank. It was deliberate. Carla promised to keep an eye out, but her tone suggested she didn't expect much. That night, Riley cooked dinner in Ethan's apartment, a simple pasta dish that filled the air with the scent of garlic and basil. They laughed over shared stories, but the undercurrent of fear remained. As they washed dishes side by side, Riley's shoulder brushed Ethan's, and he felt a spark that made him bold. "Riley," he said, turning to face them, "I don't know what this is yet, but I want to find out. With you." Riley's eyes softened, and they leaned in, their lips meeting Ethan's in a kiss that felt like a beginning. It was tentative at first, then deepening, a promise sealed in the quiet of the night. The kiss changed everything. Ethan woke the next morning with a lightness he hadn't felt in years, but the weight of the letters pressed against it. He and Riley were building something fragile and beautiful, and the thought of someone trying to tear it down fueled a fire in him he didn't know he had. They decided to take action. Ethan printed flyers announcing a building meeting to address community concerns. A vague enough phrase to draw out the culprit without accusing anyone outright. Riley was skeptical but agreed, their trust in Ethan a quiet anchor. They posted the flyers in the lobby on bulletin boards under doors. The meeting was set for Friday night in the common room. As the day approached, Ethan noticed shifts in the building's atmosphere. Neighbors whispered in the halls, glances lingered too long. Mrs. Callahan avoided him entirely, her usual complaints about noise replaced by silence. Ethan wondered if she was the one, but Riley urged him to stay open-minded. "It could be anyone," they said, their voice tinged with resignation. Friday night arrived, and the common room was packed. Ethan stood at the front, Riley beside him, their presence a quiet strength. He spoke first, his voice steady despite the knot in his stomach. "We're here because someone in this building is targeting one of our own with hate. It stops now." He held up the letters, their words blurred but their intent clear. Murmurs rippled through the room. Carla, the manager, stepped in, promising increased security and urging anyone with information to come forward. A few neighbors nodded, others looked away. Then, a young man named Josh, a quiet graphic designer from the third floor, spoke up. "I saw someone in a hoodie near Riley's door last week," he said, his voice shaking. "I didn't think much of it then, but..." Ethan's heart raced. It was a lead, however small. After the meeting, he and Riley thanked Josh, who seemed relieved to have spoken. But as the crowd dispersed, Ethan caught Mrs. Callahan's glare, her lips tight with disapproval. He wanted to confront her, but Riley's hand on his arm stopped him. "Not yet," they whispered. The next day, Ethan and Riley reviewed the security footage again, this time with Josh's tip in mind. They spotted the hooded figure, and though the face was unclear, the build suggested someone younger than Mrs. Callahan. Ethan's mind spun. Could it be someone they hadn't suspected? He felt a pang of guilt for assuming the worst of her. That evening, Riley invited Ethan to a local queer poetry reading, a small act of defiance against the fear. The venue was a cozy bookstore in Fremont, filled with warm light and the hum of voices. Riley read a poem they'd written, their words raw and haunting, weaving a story of resilience and love. Ethan watched, mesmerized, feeling pride in something deeper, a longing to be part of Riley's world. Afterward, they walked home under a starlit sky, their hands entwined. "I'm scared," Riley admitted, their voice barely audible. "But being with you makes it bearable." Ethan pulled them close, his lips brushing their forehead. "We'll get through this," he promised, though he wasn't sure how. Back at the building, they found another letter under Riley's door. This one was different. A single sentence. "Stop flaunting it or it gets worse." Ethan's blood ran cold. He wanted to tear the building apart, to find the coward behind this. But Riley, trembling, asked him to stay. They curled up together on Riley's couch, the silence between them heavy but comforting, a shared defiance against the hate. The letters were a drumbeat, each one louder, more menacing. Ethan couldn't sleep, his mind racing with images of Riley's fear, the hooded figure, the building's watchful eyes. He and Riley decided to take a bolder step. They'd set up a hidden camera outside Riley's door, a small device Ethan had from his tech tinkering days. If the culprit returned, they'd have proof. Installing the camera felt like a small victory, a way to reclaim control. But it also heightened the tension. Every creak in the hallway, every shadow, set Ethan on edge. Riley tried to keep things light, inviting him to bake cookies one night, their laughter filling the apartment as flour dusted their clothes. Yet even in those moments, the fear lingered, a reminder of the world's cruelty. The camera caught something 3 nights later. At 2:17 a.m., a figure in a hoodie slipped a letter under Riley's door. Ethan and Riley watched the footage the next morning, hearts pounding. The figure's face was partially visible. A young man, maybe mid-20s, with sharp features and a tense jaw. Ethan recognized him. Tyler, a new tenant who kept to himself, always wearing earbuds and avoiding eye contact. Confronting Tyler was risky, but Ethan couldn't wait. He knocked on Tyler's door that evening, Riley at his side. Tyler answered, his expression guarded. "What's this about?" he asked, his voice clipped. Ethan held up a still from the footage. "This is you, isn't it?" Leaving letters under Riley's door. His tone was steady, but anger simmered beneath it. Tyler's face paled, but he didn't deny it. "You don't get it," he muttered, looking away. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." Riley stepped forward, their voice calm but firm. "Then explain it. Why are you doing this?" Tyler hesitated, then slumped against the doorframe. He confessed he'd grown up in a strict household, taught that people like Riley were wrong, sinful. Moving to Seattle was his escape, but seeing Riley, so open, so unapologetic, stirred old fears he hadn't shaken. I thought I was protecting something," he said, his voice breaking. "But I was wrong. I'm sorry." Ethan wanted to be angry, to shout, but Tyler's remorse was raw, disarming. Riley, ever compassionate, spoke softly. "You don't have to carry that hate. You can let it go." Their words hung in the air, a lifeline Tyler didn't expect. They didn't report Tyler to the police. Instead, they asked him to attend a community meeting, to face the neighbors he'd hurt. Tyler agreed, his shame palpable. The meeting was tense but healing. Neighbors shared stories, some of prejudice they'd faced, others of acceptance they'd found. Tyler listened, head bowed, and when he spoke, his apology was halting but sincere. Afterward, Ethan and Riley walked to the rooftop, the city sprawling below. "You were incredible," Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. Riley smiled, leaning into him. "We did this together," they said. "You gave me the strength to keep going." As they stood there, the weight of the past weeks lifted, replaced by a quiet hope. Ethan kissed Riley under the stars, their connection deeper for the battles they'd faced. They weren't just neighbors anymore. They were each other's refuge. Months passed, and the building settled into a new rhythm. Tyler kept his distance but made small gestures, helping with building chores, joining community events, as if trying to rebuild trust. Mrs. Callahan, to Ethan's surprise, softened, even inviting Riley for tea one afternoon. "I was wrong about you," she admitted gruffly, and Riley's gracious smile was a victory in itself. Ethan and Riley grew closer, their days filled with small, beautiful moments. Cooking together, exploring Seattle's hidden gems, dreaming of a future that felt possible now. Ethan found himself opening up about Mark, about the pain of being rejected for who he was. Riley listened, their presence a balm, and shared their own scars. Rejection from family, the struggle to find a place to belong. One spring evening, they sat on the same bench under the cherry tree where they'd first grown close. The blossoms were in full bloom, petals drifting like soft promises. Ethan took Riley's hand, his heart full. "I didn't think I could feel like this again," he said. "You've changed everything." Riley's eyes shone. "You showed me I could be brave," they replied. "That's more than I ever hoped for." They decided to move in together, turning Ethan's apartment into their shared home. It wasn't perfect. There were still whispers, still challenges, but they faced them side by side. The letters stopped, and the building felt lighter, as if it had exhaled a long-held breath. Their story wasn't just about love. It was about courage, about standing up to hate and choosing connection over fear. Ethan and Riley had found each other in a world that tried to keep them apart, and in doing so, they'd built something unbreakable. As they sat under the cherry tree, the city humming around them, they knew they'd found home, not just in Seattle, but in each other.